Your soulmate's secret love letter is waiting. Open this before it's too late, and before you tell yourself you'll come back to it later, pause right here. Some messages don't repeat themselves. Some arrive once, quietly, when the heart is finally brave enough to speak without protection. This is one of those moments. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just precise in its timing, as if it found you exactly when it needed to. Listen carefully, because this isn't a letter written in a rush. It's been waiting. Folded inside silence. Tucked behind restraint. Hidden in the spaces where words were swallowed instead of spoken. Your soulmate didn't write this with confidence, they wrote it with honesty. And honesty always takes longer, because it has to pass through fear first. Stay with this, because the idea of a secret love letter isn't romantic in the way movies show it. It's heavier than that. A secret love letter exists because the writer didn't feel safe enough to send it before. Not unsafe with you, but unsafe with what it would mean to be seen fully. Loving quietly can feel easier than loving openly when the risk feels too high. Don't scroll away yet, because this letter wasn't written to change your life overnight. It was written to tell the truth before time made it harder. Your soulmate reached a point where holding these words inside felt more painful than releasing them. That's when people write letters they don't know how to send yet. Listen closely. This letter doesn't begin with grand declarations. It begins with recognition. Recognition of moments you probably thought were forgotten. Small things. Ordinary conversations. The way you listened. The way you stayed calm when things felt uncertain. These are the details that live in secret letters. Not the highlights, but the human moments that linger. Stay right here, because this matters. Your soulmate didn't fall in love with an idea of you. They fell in love with who you were when no one was watching. And that kind of love doesn't announce itself loudly. It waits. It watches. It grows roots instead of fireworks. Don't skip this part, because secrecy doesn't mean deception here. It means protection. They protected this love because they didn't know where it belonged yet. They didn't know if it would be welcomed or misunderstood. So they kept it close, writing words in their mind instead of on paper, rehearsing sentences that never left their lips. Listen gently now. The reason this letter is waiting is because timing finally shifted. Not externally, but internally. Your soulmate realized that unsent love doesn't stay neutral. It turns into regret if it's carried too long. And regret is heavier than rejection. That's when courage arrives. Stay with me, because this letter isn't asking you to come back or move forward yet. It's asking you to see something clearly. To understand that while silence existed, love didn't disappear. It stayed present in the background, shaping how they moved through other connections, other moments, other choices. Don't scroll away, because this is important for you. Reading a secret love letter isn't about obligation. It's about information. Information that fills gaps you may have lived with quietly. Gaps that made you question your instincts, your memories, your sense of what was real. This letter answers questions you stopped asking out loud. Listen closely. Your soulmate wrote about distance without blaming it. About timing without resentment. About mistakes without excuses. A secret love letter doesn't try to rewrite history. It acknowledges it honestly. That honesty is what makes it powerful. Stay right here, because you might feel something stirring as you imagine this letter being opened. Not urgency. Recognition. A quiet, "I knew it," settling into your chest. That feeling isn't nostalgia pulling you backward. It's clarity catching up. Don't skip this, because the letter doesn't deny pain. It doesn't pretend things were easy. It admits that love existed alongside fear. That care existed alongside silence. That wanting you didn't always mean knowing how to show up for you. Those truths don't excuse anything, but they explain a lot. Listen gently. Your soulmate isn't asking you to forgive before you understand. They're offering understanding first. Forgiveness, if it comes later. A secret love letter doesn't demand absolution. It offers context. Stay with this thought. The reason the letter says, "Open this before it's too late," isn't about deadlines or pressure. It's about emotional timing. There's a window where honesty can still heal something internally, even if it doesn't change the external story. That window doesn't stay open forever. Don't scroll away yet, because this letter is also about you reclaiming your narrative. Knowing that love existed on both sides changes how you carry the past. It removes the question mark. It allows you to stop wondering whether you imagined the depth of what you felt. Listen closely. Your soulmate wrote this letter knowing it might never be returned. That's what makes it honest. They didn't write it to secure a future. They wrote it to align with the truth. To stop living slightly misaligned with their own heart. Stay right here, because this isn't about destiny forcing anything. It's about choice. Your choice to read with an open mind. Their choice to finally speak. Choice is what gives this moment its weight. Don't skip this part, because the letter doesn't idealize you. It sees you. Your strengths. Your boundaries. Your growth. It acknowledges that you're not the same person you were before. And it respects that. Love that matures learns how to honor change instead of resisting it. Listen gently. You may notice that the idea of this letter doesn't make you anxious. It makes you still. That stillness is important. It means you're not being pulled by fear or fantasy. You're standing in awareness. Stay with me, because awareness is what allows you to receive truth without rushing to act on it. You don't have to respond immediately. You don't have to decide anything today. Reading is not agreeing. Understanding is not committing. Don't scroll away, because this is where many people misunderstand love letters. They think opening one means reopening everything. It doesn't. Sometimes it closes a loop. Sometimes it softens a memory. Sometimes it simply gives dignity to something that mattered. Listen closely. Your soulmate didn't write this letter to disrupt your life. They wrote it to stop disrupting their own inner peace. Carrying unsaid love creates noise inside a person. Speaking it brings quiet. Stay right here, because that quiet is what you're being invited into. Not chaos. Not confusion. Quiet understanding. The kind that lets you breathe easier, regardless of what comes next. Don't skip this, because this letter also reminds you of something important. You are capable of being loved deeply, even when circumstances don't allow it to be expressed perfectly. That truth stays with you, long after the letter is read. Listen gently now. Whether this leads to conversation, closure, or simply reflection, it has already done something meaningful. It replaced uncertainty with truth. And truth, even when it complicates things, is lighter to carry than silence. Stay present. Let the idea of this letter settle. You don't need to rush to the ending. This is only the beginning of understanding what was hidden, not a demand to change what is. Your soulmate's secret love letter is waiting, not to pull you backward, but to finally tell the truth. And sometimes, telling the truth before it's too late is the bravest act of love there is. Before you rush past this, slow your breathing and stay right here, because opening a secret love letter doesn't end when the words are read. It begins after. When your soulmate finally allows those hidden feelings to be seen, the real weight of the letter settles in the silence that follows. Not loud. Not dramatic. Just present, like a truth that has been waiting patiently for you to notice it. Listen carefully, because this part is about what that letter carries beneath the words. Your soulmate didn't just write sentences. They poured years of restraint into it. Moments where they almost reached out but didn't. Times they chose distance over honesty because they weren't sure love would be safe in the open. That letter holds every unsent message, every paused breath, every choice to stay quiet instead of risk everything. Stay right here, because the letter wasn't written from certainty. It was written from courage. Certainty is easy when outcomes are guaranteed. Courage is required when you have no idea how the truth will land. Your soulmate knew this letter could change nothing externally and still chose to write it. That choice alone tells you how heavy these feelings became to carry alone. Don't scroll away yet, because secrecy doesn't mean the love was small. It often means the opposite. People hide what they're afraid to lose. They protect what feels too important to risk. This letter stayed hidden because your soulmate didn't want to damage the connection by speaking before they understood their own heart. Silence wasn't absence. It was containment. Listen gently now. The letter speaks about time differently than you might expect. It doesn't complain about waiting. It acknowledges it. Your soulmate understands now that time didn't weaken their feelings, it clarified them. Love that survives waiting becomes quieter, more grounded, less demanding. That's the kind of love written here. Not urgent. Not desperate. Honest. Stay with me, because this letter also holds accountability. It doesn't place blame on fate, distance, or circumstances alone. It admits hesitation. Fear. Moments where they chose comfort over courage. A secret love letter that matters doesn't paint the writer as a victim. It paints them as human. Don't skip this, because this honesty may stir emotions you thought were settled. You might feel validation. You might feel grief for what wasn't said sooner. You might feel peace knowing you didn't imagine the connection. All of those reactions are normal. This letter isn't meant to make you decide anything. It's meant to make you understand. Listen closely. Your soulmate didn't write this letter expecting a reply. That's what makes it different. It wasn't written to reopen something forcefully. It was written so the truth wouldn't remain trapped. When love stays hidden too long, it starts to distort memory. Writing it down allowed them to see it clearly, without fantasy or fear. Stay right here, because reading this letter doesn't obligate you to anything. Understanding does not equal agreement. Recognition does not equal reunion. You are allowed to hold this truth without acting on it. The letter respects your autonomy even as it reveals vulnerability. Don't scroll away, because this letter also changes how silence feels. Silence no longer holds unanswered questions. It holds context. You may realize that quiet moments in the past weren't empty. They were full of things unsaid. Knowing that doesn't erase pain, but it replaces confusion with clarity. Listen gently. Your soulmate wrote about you as you are, not as you were idealized. They see your growth, your boundaries, the distance you've traveled emotionally. This isn't a letter clinging to an old version of you. It's a letter acknowledging who you've become. Stay with this thought. Love that matures learns how to respect change. It doesn't demand that people stay the same to be loved. This letter doesn't ask you to return to the past. It simply honors what existed within it. Don't skip this part, because the phrase, "before it's too late," isn't about deadlines. It's about emotional honesty. Too late doesn't mean missing a relationship. Too late means carrying regret instead of truth. Your soulmate didn't want regret to be the final chapter on their side. Listen closely. This letter may feel like closure, or it may feel like an opening. Both responses are valid. Closure doesn't always mean goodbye. Sometimes it means peace with what was real. And peace is powerful, even when nothing else changes. Stay right here, because this letter also gives you something important. Confirmation that you mattered. That you weren't just a phase or a convenience. That even in silence, you lived in someone's heart. That knowledge strengthens self-trust. It reminds you that your emotional intuition wasn't wrong. Don't scroll away yet, because this is where perspective shifts. You no longer have to wonder why certain connections felt unfinished. You no longer have to question whether distance meant indifference. The letter doesn't rewrite the story, but it fills in missing pages. Listen gently now. Your soulmate may not even know what happens next, and that's okay. This letter wasn't about planning a future. It was about cleaning the past. About aligning inner truth with outer reality. That alignment creates peace, regardless of outcome. Stay with me, because this is about dignity. There's dignity in speaking love without pressure. There's dignity in receiving truth without exploiting it. This moment holds dignity for both of you if it's handled with care. Don't skip this, because you're allowed to take time. Emotional truths don't need immediate responses. They need space to settle. Letting this letter breathe inside you will show you how you really feel, beyond initial reactions. Listen closely. You might notice that your body feels lighter reading this. Or heavier. Or calm. Those sensations are information. They're telling you how this truth fits into your life now. Trust them more than overthinking. Stay right here, because the letter isn't asking you to choose love over your life. It's asking you to acknowledge love as part of your story. Acknowledgement is not a commitment. It's an act of honesty. Don't scroll away, because this is the quiet power of secret love letters. They don't force outcomes. They reveal reality. And reality, once known, gives you freedom. Listen gently. Whether this leads to conversation, reflection, or simply peace, the letter has already done something meaningful. It replaced silence with truth. And truth, even when complex, is easier to carry than unanswered questions. Stay present with this final understanding. You didn't miss your chance to be loved. You were loved, even quietly. What happens next is your choice, guided by clarity instead of mystery. Your soulmate's secret love letter was waiting not to change your future, but to honor your past. And sometimes, that is exactly what the heart needs before it can fully move forward. Let yourself settle into this moment before moving on, because part 3 is where the meaning of the secret love letter begins to deepen rather than expand. The first part was about the letter existing. The second was about what it carried. This part is about how it quietly changes you once it's been received, even if nothing outwardly happens at all. Listen carefully, because after reading a secret love letter like this, something inside you recalibrates. Not in a dramatic, life-altering way, but in a subtle, grounding one. The unanswered questions that once floated around your heart don't feel as sharp anymore. They don't pull at you the same way. There's a difference between not knowing and finally understanding. Understanding doesn't always bring joy, but it almost always brings relief. Stay right here, because this letter wasn't written to pull you backward. It was written to stop something from lingering unfinished. Your soulmate reached a point where carrying love silently felt heavier than the risk of being honest. That shift matters. It means the letter came from emotional responsibility, not impulse. Listen gently now. When someone keeps a love secret for a long time, it doesn't stay frozen. It evolves. It becomes less about longing and more about respect. Less about possession and more about appreciation. This letter reflects that maturity. It doesn't demand access to your life. It acknowledges your place in theirs. Don't skip this, because this part of the letter speaks about restraint. About moments when they wanted to reach out and chose not to. Not because they didn't care, but because they cared enough to respect distance. Restraint is rarely talked about in love stories, but it's one of the clearest signs that love was real. People don't restrain themselves over something that doesn't matter. Stay with me, because this is where perspective shifts. You may start seeing past interactions differently. That quiet goodbye. That pause before a message that never came. That moment when you felt something but couldn't explain it. These weren't coincidences. They were moments where love existed but didn't know how to cross into words. Listen closely. The letter doesn't ask you to forgive the silence. It explains it. Explanation is not justification, and your feelings about it remain valid. But understanding gives your emotions somewhere to rest instead of spinning endlessly. Don't scroll away yet, because this letter also challenges a common belief. That love only counts when it's loud, visible, and consistent. The truth is, some love exists quietly because the people carrying it didn't yet know how to show up for it properly. That doesn't excuse absence, but it does explain complexity. Stay right here, because complexity doesn't mean confusion anymore. It means layered truth. And layered truth is easier to hold than unanswered mystery. Mystery keeps wounds open. Truth lets them close, even if scars remain. Listen gently. Your soulmate's letter also reveals something about you. It shows that you were someone worth loving deeply, even when it was inconvenient, uncertain, or risky. That says something about the way you show up in people's lives. About the kind of presence you bring. Don't skip this, because recognizing that doesn't mean inflating your ego. It means strengthening your self-trust. You didn't imagine the connection. You didn't misread everything. Even if the outcome wasn't what you hoped, the feeling was mutual. Stay with this thought. The letter doesn't romanticize missed chances. It acknowledges them with realism. Your soulmate understands that timing matters. That choices matter. That love alone doesn't solve everything. And still, they felt it was important to say the truth before time erased the opportunity to be honest. Listen closely. This is where the phrase, "before it's too late," really lives. Too late doesn't mean too late to be together. It means too late to speak honestly. Too late to align inner truth with outer reality. Too late to stop carrying something that deserved to be named. Don't scroll away, because this letter also offers you permission. Permission to release the burden of wondering. Permission to stop questioning whether you mattered. Permission to move forward without carrying doubt as baggage. Stay right here, because moving forward doesn't mean forgetting. It means integrating. Integration is when something becomes part of your story instead of a loose thread pulling at you. This letter ties that thread gently, without forcing a knot. Listen gently now. You may feel compassion for your soulmate in a new way. Not romantic longing, but human understanding. Understanding how hard it is to navigate fear, timing, and love all at once. Compassion doesn't require reunion. It simply acknowledges humanity. Don't skip this, because compassion softens the edges of memory. It doesn't erase pain, but it removes bitterness. And bitterness is often what keeps people stuck long after situations have ended. Stay with me, because this part is about emotional freedom. Freedom doesn't come from getting everything you want. It comes from knowing the truth and choosing consciously. This letter gives you information, not obligation. And information, when held honestly, creates choice. Listen closely. You might notice that your inner dialogue changes now. Instead of asking, "Why didn't they care?" you may find yourself saying, "They cared, but didn't know how to show it." That shift doesn't excuse hurt, but it brings clarity. And clarity reduces self-blame. Don't scroll away yet, because this is important. The letter doesn't ask you to reopen a door you closed for good reasons. It doesn't invalidate the growth you've done since then. It simply acknowledges that love existed alongside those reasons. Stay right here, because acknowledging that doesn't weaken you. It strengthens you. It shows that you can hold two truths at once: love was real, and moving on may still be right. Listen gently. Your soulmate wrote this letter knowing that acknowledgement might be the only outcome. And they accepted that. Acceptance is what makes this letter clean. It doesn't manipulate. It doesn't pressure. It releases. Don't skip this, because this is where peace enters. Peace doesn't mean happiness. It means stillness. It means the absence of unresolved questions. It means you no longer need to replay the past to make sense of it. Stay with this understanding. If you ever think about this letter again, it won't feel heavy. It will feel complete. Completion is rare in emotional stories, but when it happens, it's powerful. Listen closely now. What happens next doesn't need to be decided today. You can let this truth settle naturally. It will show you, over time, how it fits into your life now. Don't scroll away, because this final part matters. This secret love letter didn't arrive to disrupt your peace. It arrived to restore it. To replace silence with understanding. To turn mystery into truth. And sometimes, that is the most loving thing two people can give each other, even if their paths never fully align again. Let that sit with you. Let it breathe. And trust that whatever comes next for you will be guided by clarity, not unanswered questions. Take a moment and stay right here, because part 4 isn't about adding new emotion to the story. It's about what quietly stabilizes after the truth has been absorbed. This is the stage where the secret love letter stops feeling like something you just read and starts feeling like something that has found its place inside you. Not loud. Not overwhelming. Just settled. Listen carefully, because after understanding comes integration. Integration is different from acceptance. Acceptance says, this happened. Integration says, this belongs in my life story without controlling it. That's what's happening now. The letter no longer feels like a question mark. It feels like a period. Not the end of everything, but the end of confusion. Stay right here, because this is where your emotional balance returns. You're no longer trying to decode the past or imagine alternate timelines. The what-ifs lose their grip. Not because they weren't valid, but because they've been answered in the only way that matters. You know the truth now. And knowing doesn't agitate your heart. It steadies it. Listen gently. This is also where you notice something surprising. The intensity you thought might follow doesn't arrive. Instead, there's calm. That calm is not indifference. It's resolution. Resolution doesn't mean the connection didn't matter. It means it no longer needs your emotional energy to survive. Don't skip this, because this is important. When a secret love letter finally comes into the open, it removes the emotional charge from silence. Silence used to feel heavy because it held unknowns. Now, silence feels neutral. Peaceful, even. That shift alone changes how you breathe. Stay with me, because this phase often goes unnoticed. People expect clarity to feel dramatic. They expect some rush of emotion or a big decision. But real clarity often feels like exhaling after holding your breath for too long. Quiet relief. Nothing more needs to be solved. Listen closely. Your soulmate, too, is experiencing this settling. They're no longer carrying the tension of unsaid words. They're no longer editing themselves internally. That doesn't mean they stopped caring. It means their care has found honesty. Honesty allows people to relax into themselves. Don't scroll away yet, because this is where mutual respect shows itself. They respected you enough to tell the truth without demanding anything. You respect yourself enough to receive it without rushing to respond or fix. That mutual respect is the most mature form of connection there is. Stay right here, because this part is about emotional boundaries becoming clear. Not walls. Boundaries. You're able to acknowledge what existed without reopening wounds or abandoning your present life. You're not pulled backward, and you're not forcing yourself forward. You're standing exactly where you are. Listen gently. You may notice that memories associated with this person feel different now. Softer. Less sharp. Less loaded. That doesn't mean they've lost meaning. It means they've lost power over you. Memories can exist without controlling your emotions when they're understood fully. Don't skip this, because this is where forgiveness quietly becomes possible. Not necessarily forgiveness of actions, but forgiveness of confusion. Forgiveness of not knowing sooner. Forgiveness of timing. Forgiveness of yourself for questioning your intuition. Forgiveness doesn't have to be declared. Sometimes it simply happens. Stay with this thought. Forgiveness isn't about saying everything was okay. It's about saying, I understand enough to stop carrying resentment. And resentment is often heavier than sadness. Releasing it frees up space inside you. Listen closely. This letter also restores something important, your sense of emotional truth. You can trust your feelings again. You no longer have to second-guess whether you misread the connection. That trust will quietly influence how you approach future relationships. You'll recognize depth without doubting yourself. Don't scroll away, because this is the part where wisdom forms. Wisdom is what's left after emotion settles. And wisdom here says this: love doesn't need to last forever to be real. It doesn't need perfect timing to be meaningful. It just needs to be honest at some point. Stay right here, because this realization changes how you measure connection. You stop measuring by outcomes and start measuring by authenticity. And authenticity was present here, even if it took time to surface. Listen gently. You might also notice a subtle shift in how you feel about the future. Less guarded. Less defensive. Not because you're naive, but because you're no longer carrying unresolved doubt. Doubt hardens people. Clarity softens them. Don't skip this, because this softening doesn't make you vulnerable in a dangerous way. It makes you open in a grounded way. You know your boundaries. You know your worth. You're not waiting for validation. You already received truth. Stay with me, because this phase is also about gratitude. Not romantic gratitude, but human gratitude. Gratitude that someone chose honesty over avoidance. Gratitude that you now understand something that once felt confusing. Gratitude that you can move forward without emotional loose ends. Listen closely. Gratitude doesn't mean you owe anything. It means you acknowledge what was given. And what was given here was truth. Truth is rare. It deserves recognition, not obligation. Don't scroll away yet, because this is where many people feel tempted to rush into conversation just to do something with the clarity. Pause. There's no urgency now. The truth has already done its work. Anything else should come from calm, not momentum. Stay right here, because calm is your guide now. If you speak again, it will be from clarity. If you don't, that will also be from clarity. Either way, you're no longer reacting. You're choosing. Listen gently. You may realize that this letter closed a chapter you didn't even know was still open. You were living your life, but a small part of you kept glancing back without knowing why. That glance no longer feels necessary. Don't skip this, because this is emotional closure in its healthiest form. No confrontation. No dramatic goodbye. Just understanding. And understanding lets people move forward without bitterness or denial. Stay with this understanding. Nothing about this moment diminishes what you've built since then. In fact, it strengthens it. You're moving forward with more self-awareness, not less. Listen closely now. This isn't the end of the story in a cinematic sense. It's the end of emotional ambiguity. And emotional ambiguity is what drains people the most over time. Don't scroll away, because this final insight matters. Love that was once secret has now been acknowledged. It doesn't need to be carried anymore. Neither of you has to hold it alone. Let that rest. Let it be enough. And as you move forward from here, you'll notice something subtle but powerful: you're lighter. Not because something new began, but because something old finally found its place. That's what part 4 is about. Not change. Completion. Let this moment slow down before you read any further, because part 5 is not about adding meaning to what already exists. It's about what quietly releases once everything has finally been understood. This is the stage where the secret love letter no longer feels like something you're holding. It feels like something that gently set you free. Listen carefully, because freedom doesn't arrive loudly. It arrives as ease. As the absence of tension you didn't realize you were still carrying. For a long time, there was a subtle emotional weight attached to this connection. Not pain exactly. More like an unanswered question living in the background. Now that question has been answered, and the mind doesn't need to revisit it anymore. Stay right here, because this is where emotional energy returns to you. When something remains unresolved, it quietly drains focus, presence, and peace. You may not have noticed it consciously, but part of you was always holding space for maybe. Maybe it meant more. Maybe it was mutual. Maybe silence meant something else. That space is no longer needed. And when space is reclaimed, clarity replaces tension. Listen gently. This is also where you realize that closure doesn't always look like a conversation or a final message. Sometimes closure is simply knowing the truth and allowing it to rest. Knowing that love existed, that it was real, and that it didn't disappear just because circumstances didn't allow it to grow outwardly. Don't skip this, because this realization changes how you carry your past. The past no longer feels like something unfinished or unresolved. It feels complete. Not perfect, but complete. And completion allows you to move forward without dragging old emotion into new spaces. Stay with me, because part 5 is about self-trust returning fully. When the truth was unclear, it was easy to doubt your own intuition. To wonder if you felt too deeply or imagined too much. Now you know you didn't. Your emotional awareness was accurate. That confirmation strengthens how you listen to yourself going forward. Listen closely. You may notice that your body feels calmer when you think about this connection now. Less tightness. Less emotional charge. That physical response matters. The body often processes closure before the mind names it. Calm is a signal that something has been resolved internally. Don't scroll away yet, because this is where emotional maturity shows itself. Emotional maturity doesn't mean denying what you felt. It means honoring it without letting it define your future. You're no longer attached to an outcome. You're attached to truth. And truth doesn't pull. It steadies. Stay right here, because this phase also brings compassion without confusion. You can feel compassion for your soulmate without longing. Understanding without attachment. Respect without obligation. That balance is rare, and it only comes when clarity has fully settled. Listen gently. This is where resentment quietly dissolves, if there was any left. Not because everything was okay, but because you understand enough to release blame. Blame thrives in confusion. Clarity dissolves it. And without blame, the heart softens naturally. Don't skip this, because softening doesn't make you vulnerable in a harmful way. It makes you open in a grounded way. You're not reopening wounds. You're allowing them to heal properly. Healing isn't about forgetting. It's about no longer reacting. Stay with this thought. The secret love letter served its purpose. It didn't arrive to change your direction. It arrived to stabilize your foundation. To make sure you weren't building your future on unanswered questions from the past. Listen closely. You may also notice that your expectations in future connections feel clearer now. You'll recognize when something is mutual. You'll trust your perception without needing constant reassurance. That's a quiet gift of this moment. Don't scroll away, because this part matters deeply. Many people carry emotional ambiguity into new relationships without realizing it. You're not doing that anymore. You're moving forward cleanly. Whole. Self-aware. Stay right here, because this is also where gratitude completes its work. Gratitude not for what didn't happen, but for what was revealed. Gratitude that someone chose honesty instead of leaving things unresolved forever. Gratitude that you now understand something that once felt confusing. Listen gently. Gratitude doesn't mean you owe a response or a continuation. It means you acknowledge the courage it took to speak. And acknowledging courage doesn't require changing your life to honor it. Don't skip this, because this is where emotional independence becomes clear. You're not waiting. You're not hoping. You're not anticipating. You're present. And presence is the strongest emotional position anyone can stand in. Stay with me, because presence also changes how you remember love. Love no longer feels like something that slipped through your hands. It feels like something that existed, mattered, and taught you something important about yourself. Listen closely. This lesson isn't about loss. It's about depth. About knowing that you're capable of being loved deeply and quietly. That kind of love doesn't disappear when circumstances change. It leaves a mark. A steady one. Don't scroll away yet, because this is where acceptance fully arrives. Acceptance doesn't mean resignation. It means peace with reality. Peace with timing. Peace with truth. And peace doesn't need to be loud to be real. Stay right here, because acceptance also means you no longer feel the need to explain this story to anyone else. You don't need validation from others. You understand it for yourself. And that's enough. Listen gently. You might realize that you're smiling softly now when you think about it. Not because you want it back, but because you understand it. Understanding transforms emotion into wisdom. Don't skip this, because wisdom is what stays. Wisdom says that love doesn't fail just because it doesn't last forever. Wisdom says that silence doesn't always mean absence. Wisdom says that truth, even delayed, is still valuable. Stay with me, because this part is about carrying that wisdom forward. Into new connections. New conversations. New choices. You're not guarded. You're informed. And there's a difference. Listen closely now. This is the moment where you stop waiting for the past to explain itself. It already has. The letter said what needed to be said. Nothing else is required. Don't scroll away, because this final feeling matters. You're not empty. You're complete. You didn't lose something. You gained clarity. And clarity is one of the most powerful emotional.
If this message resonated with you, if at any point you felt seen, calmer, or understood, that's not an accident. It means you are paying attention to your inner world, and that's where real growth happens. You don't have to have everything figured out today. Just knowing the truth already puts you one step closer to peace. The space exists for people who feel deeply, who think quietly, and who are uh, navigating love, healing, and clarity at their own pace. If you want more messages like this, messages that don't shoot at you but speak to you, then take a second to like this video. It helps this kind of content reach the people who need it most. Share it with someone who might be carrying unanswered feelings, and if you have not already subscribed to this channel so you can't don't miss the next message meant for you.